What's up, everybody? It is the podcast about everything. We're back again for another week and another chat session. I have Joe with me. How are you, Joe?
Jake, I am doing absolutely fine. Thank you for asking. The weather has taken a turn for the worst. We're seeing that lightning. We're seeing the thunder. It is storms, not quite of the sort of biblical sense, but it's pretty miserable out there. So what better thing to do than sit inside and make a podcast, Jake?
Exactly. It is typical British weather. 1 week it's bloody beautiful, 25 degrees, 30 degrees, whatever. And now this week it's gone down to like 10 or 11 and it's bloody cold. And it hailstones in some cases.
You've got to keep warm. That's what I'm saying, everyone. Make sure you're warm. Make sure you're cozy. Have yourself a cup of tea or maybe something a little stronger. I think it's time to be socially isolating again, that's for sure. With this weather, you're not going to be going out too much.
No, and by the sounds of it, us talking about the weather shows that we are the most boring people on the planet right now.
Thanks, Jake.
So without further ado, let me introduce today's topic. Today's topic is gaming. Not gaming as in board gaming. We're talking games in video games. It's also a special episode in the sense that we have our first guest with us, a personal friend of ours, John. He's maybe call himself a pro gamer. I'm not sure. I'm going to introduce him. I'm going to let him tell you what he sees himself as. John, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, boys. How are you?
Not bad.
You call me a pro gamer. That's a bit strong.
Really?
Game. Would you prefer gaming?
That's good. Would you be a novice, an amateur?
Maybe just an enthusiast. I think that's a fair title.
Okay. He's humble. All right. He's humble. He's an enthusiast.
Yeah.
I would say that for the listeners out there, John is our go-to guy when it comes to lots of things. Gaming is one of those things in particular. So as far as we're concerned, he's an expert. So can we at least call you a gaming expert, John? Would that be okay?
Yeah, go on then.
Okay.
If you must.
See? All right. So now we've found that. All right. We know what to call him, the gaming expert. Let's talk about games. John, what was your first experience of gaming?
Oh, I think back to when I was a kid. I'm very lucky in the sense that, I know a lot of people's parents don't necessarily or didn't necessarily view gaming when they were younger as anything positive. But my dad absolutely loved gaming. Some of my earliest memories are sitting on his lap watching him play Doom, Castle Wolfenstein.
Wow, Doom.
Yeah, I know, Doom. Yeah,
it's a heavy thing to show a little kid.
He was probably hoping that I was too young not to remember, but clearly
scarred for life.
Too old to remember, but yeah, some very early experiences with gaming. Watching him play those games, watching him play Space Hulk, things like that. The original sort of 2D rendering on computers and stuff like that. So yeah, I started quite young in terms of my gaming journey, as it were. I'll never forget the first experience of a multiplayer game was seeing him and a few of his friends from work all gather around in a spare room in our old house and literally hook up all their computers onto a network and play the game Hexen, which, right, if anyone listening out there is an old gaming, know-it-all, will know that was one of the very first multiplayer games that was ever made. And the highlight was being able to turn your opponent into a chicken.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gaming's clearly come a long way in that time. So clearly you had a rich introduction to gaming, from your folks, which is great. So do you remember perhaps your first console, the first time you had a console of your own to explore with?
It's funny because many people won't necessarily classify it as a console, but I saw my Game Boy as the very first sort of console that I owned, even though it was like a...
Yeah, that's definitely a console. It's a handheld console.
Yeah, that's exactly how I viewed it. And I'll never forget playing those first games. I can't remember the actual full title of it, but it was a Super Mario game. It was Super Mario themed, but it was like you had to fire blocks into stuff and knock them down. I think it was called like pinball, almost like pinball, yeah, but with Super Mario theme to it. That's the first memory I have of the first game I had on Game Boy, mainly because it offended no one whatsoever. It was definitely made for kids.
Was that not a disappointment after experiencing Doom?
Well, I think I was just more absolutely chuffed to have this piece of amazing technology in my hands where I could put a cartridge in the top of it, push start and play. and you could sit there for hours as long as the battery lasted. You could sit there for hours and play and keep yourself entertained. So yeah, I kind of consider that my first console. But if you're talking about a traditional plug in the wall into your TV console, I was very lucky when I think I must have been about 12 years old. I think when my dad did a lot of work in Japan at the time, and I remember he came back from Tokyo, and for my birthday he bought me a chipped PlayStation 1. So it had and it was I didn't see what the difference was. He never understood what that was. But all I knew is that he came back with a huge stack of discs, all of them in plastic sleeves. So it was 100% legit.
Leg edition.
Yeah, and it also had the light gun, the PlayStation 1 light gun, so you could play Time Crisis. I think my dad bought it for him as much as he bought it for me, because he used to play a lot of Time Crisis with me and also without me. But it was great. That was my very first sort of plug in the wall console.
Okay, so really, I don't know. To me personally, I would say for the plug in the wall console, that's probably starting kind of late in today's sort of standards, for example. But me myself, I think I was like 4 when I got my first console. I had a NES, the Super Mario one, of the NES with the square controller. All we had was A, B, up, down, left, right. Start that one. I had that.
That's old school, yeah. You're taking us back to the early 90s here, Jake.
Yeah, and I had probably what would have been the first ever light gun. So it was like the orange and grey gun. I used to play duck hunt with. Me and my dad would play that. Yeah, that was literally for me. That was like probably the earliest. And like you mentioned your dad a lot. See, my dad was the total opposite. The day I got the NES, he took me to Toys R Us. It was Christmas, and he said, "You got a choice. You either get a bike or you get a NES." There was no contest. Straight away, I was like, no, I'm having the NES. He was not happy with my choice. It's like when I was your age, if someone offered me a bike, I would have jumped at that. But you've completely turned your nose up at it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care, So yeah, so that to me, I'd say I was probably like a lot younger than John when I first started playing games.
Well, it's funny. I find it really interesting that both of you had some kind of fatherly interest, at least in some aspect, to you playing games. I mean, I got my first console, similar age to you, Jake. I think I was 5 years old. It was Christmas, and honestly, the excitement, and I'm sure this has been repeated millions and millions of times around the globe, decade after decade. That excitement when you get your first console, you open up the wrapping, and it's there. It's Christmas Day, and all you want to do is play. I knew at that point, the fact that my dad didn't even know what it was that I was opening, that he had no part in planning that gift. He was I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've ever played a computer game with my old man. But he struggles to use his mobile phone, let alone pick up a controller of a computer game. So at least you're both privileged at some point to have played some computer games with your parents. Because, I'll tell you for now, my parents haven't got a clue.
It's funny, Jake, because that's an interesting thing when you say about the idea of me coming into gaming quite late from a console point of view. I would have considered myself to be part of the PC gaming master race, as it were. Like, I used to play a lot of strategy games on PC before I got a console. So I was playing things like the original Command and Conquer. I was playing Civilization games. I was playing maybe a little bit of the original Doom as well, on that. So it was like computer. I think the computer was the first gaming platform beyond my Game Boy. But you want to talk about, the PlayStations, the Xboxes, things like that. That's what I started.
When I first started seeing PCs being used for gaming, I was probably around 11 or 12. And I was astounded because to me, it always seemed like a PC was just for schoolwork. I didn't know like you could attach a joystick or a controller to them or something and use them like a console. So for me to see that the first time, I was so shocked because I didn't know PCs were capable of such things.
Whatever PC I had at home, it was never powerful enough to play any good game. So, it would lag, it'd be slow, the controllers would never work. I'd never have a proper one. I'd have to use the keyboard, and up and down would be fire and shoot and everything. It was mad. And that's the thing, I think, as well. I suppose at that early period, again, with my parents being pretty much technophobes, we never had anything power enough to play a computer game on. So I guess in one sense, John, you were quite fortunate that you had a good bit of kit there at home.
Well, as I say, the best bit of kit in my home for gaming was my dad. he was the guy who enabled it all. So yeah.
So what we're gonna do, John? Like on Top Gear when they have a guest on, they ask them for their car history and stuff. Yeah. We want to know your console history. From the very beginning. So if it is the first one from when you were 12, okay, start with that. But whatever you consider your first console to be, start with that.
Sure. Right. Okay. So I'll stay with, again, the traditional plug-in into your TV kind of console was the PS1. I must admit, I did have a huge amount of envy for all my mates who had N64s. But yeah, the PlayStation 1 was the very first console that I had. And I had that for a few years. And then I also got the original Xbox when that came out. And that was primarily around the fact that I had siblings as well who also liked to game. Even my brother, who's 10 years younger than me, liked to play things like FIFA, for example. And my parents saw the Xbox and got it for us mainly because it had two controllers. It came with two controllers rather than having to buy an extra one. So I had the original Xbox as well. And that introduced me to the Halo franchise.
I never played that. That's one game I never played, but I've heard it's amazing.
Yeah, the guys who wrote it over at Bungie came up with one of the best storylines for a game of all time. I mean, don't get me wrong, GoldenEye, classic game, based off of an amazing Bond film. But for me, the Halo series is one of the best out there, and that's what kind of got me hooked a little bit into the Xbox. But I think as I grew older, I understood that the idea of being able to play games with your friends and them not being in your house was quite an important thing. And I think, if I remember rightly, everyone at the time had it. I think the PlayStation 2 kind of passed me by, if I remember rightly, because I had the Xbox. But then when it came to that kind of late teenage years where you and your mates are discovering the idea of playing gaming online with each other, I got a PS3.
Yeah, I think your house was the first place I tried the PS3.
It may well have been. It may well have been. Yeah. And I think that was one of those things where, again, for the first time, we, not just we as in friends, but we and other people were getting used to the idea of that kind of online multiplayer. The internet was starting to get good enough so you could do it and not have any problems. I had a PS3 for quite a while. And then I went back to the dark side. I went back to and bought an Xbox One. And the reason for that was purely Halo 5.
Okay.
When I saw Halo 5, I was like, I have to have an Xbox One.
So that game influenced you to buy that console?
It did. It was that. It had been a little while since sort of Halo had released a really good, proper storyline-driven game rather than just kind of either re-releasing the old games and stuff like that and remastering them. But when I saw the trailers for Halo 5 and read the reviews, I was like, right, I've got to have a console that plays that game. So I got myself an Xbox One, which I subsequently replaced with an Xbox One S when that came out. Okay. So I've now got the more powerful Xbox.
That's your current console, the Xbox One S?
It is, yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it's funny, isn't it? I'm interested in the way you talk about Halo there being the driving force to you wanting to buy the console, and really interested as well to hear how the storyline played a big part in the fact that you enjoying that game. So one thing I'm really keen to understand from both of you really is when a game maybe or a series of games have basically taken over your life. Because this has happened to me, okay, and I'm sure it's happened to other people. It's happened on a couple of occasions.
Yep.
The last probably 15 years, FIFA has taken over my life, in all honesty. And usually, when I get involved in a game of FIFA, in terms of playing it day in, day out, I then, other games don't get a look in. But the only other time really that happened bad to me was actually thanks to you, Jake, with Assassin's Creed.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, the Ezio series. I mean, that got me hooked. I'm talking day, night. I'm talking, I'd be up to the early hours of the morning playing, and just 5 minutes more, and it got me hooked, right? Excellent games. So I'm interested. Start off, with you, John. Has there ever been a game or series of games that really got you hooked in big time?
As I mentioned, Halo. But the funny thing with Halo is that I played those games for the campaign and the storyline. It was almost like a film in itself, a series of films. They, in my opinion, they could probably, and I think they already have made a Halo film of sorts, but they could make a proper Halo series, whether it be a TV series or a film. Like people have got have done cinematic cuts of the remastered Halo 2 to turn that into a film in itself, which is quite cool. But you want to talk about a game where I literally sat around in my underpants and I thought I was going to get like stuck to the sofa that I'd been there for so long was Skyrim. Yeah,
What's so special about it, John?
it's just an open world game. It was kind of my first experience of a truly open world game. You could make your own character. There wasn't a set storyline you had to go down. You had at least 2 storylines you could choose from, which then meant once you completed one storyline and the umpteen amount of side quests that you could do, you could then go back and do the whole thing again and go down the other path. I really worry about how much time I've lost to that game when I got that, even to the point where I bought the remastered edition of it because I wanted to see it in better graphics and do the whole thing all over again. That game scares me how much time I spent on that when I've had that in my console.
What consoles can people play it on, John?
All of them.
Okay, so it's a multi-platform game.
Yeah, Skyrim's been around a long time. It's probably been at least 6 or 7 years now since it was released, maybe longer. But they did the remastered edition about 2-3 years ago, maybe a bit longer. I haven't touched it for a little while, mainly because I know that if I do, I'll probably lose my job. So there's only so many times you can ring in sick and then spend all day taking your character to go slay a dragon. It's a great game. It is, again, it's cross-platform. It's not exclusive to anyone. If you've got a PlayStation, if you've got an Xbox, you can play the game. And people still buy the game now, new, because it's been that big historically. It's one of Bethesda games' biggest selling games of all time.
So, Jake, you must have been hooked at some point.
Yeah, like you, it was definitely Assassin's Creed. I don't know how I ended up getting hooked. It was definitely the Ezio storyline. I played the first one that ever came out, which was set in like Syria and stuff like that, and the main character there. And that game was very sort of repetitive. Once they brought out Assassin's Creed 2, which was the start of the Ezio story, yeah, that got me hooked. And then since then, I've bought every copy of everyone. Really, I've not missed one out. I mean, there's been some really trash ones. All right, there was one set in the French Revolution, and that's probably one of the worst ones I ever did, where the gameplay was just ridiculous. It was just crap. But yeah, no, definitely Assassin's Creed. The past couple of years, they've become more open world, like a bit like Skyrim, like John says. And I found that was a bit much. It got to a point where you could play it for a few hours, and you'd be like, oh mate, like it would take like sometimes 10-15 minutes to get across one end of the map to the other if you didn't have like a fast travel. But they've got a new one coming out end of the year, set in the Viking Age, I believe. It's called Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Can't wait for that. So they've trimmed a lot of the sort of like bloaty bits out of it, which sort of overdid it a bit in the last couple of games. So I would definitely say Assassin's Creed is probably the one that got me hooked. Other than that, I like anything Star Wars related. The first 2 Battlefronts on the PS2, they were excellent. The ones that came after on the PS4 and PS3, I believe, were not so good. I don't really like them. They bought a new one out called Jedi Fallen Order. Just Christmas just gone. That was really great. Other than that, I would say, I don't know, the classics, Call of Duty. I've only just started getting into that now. And sports-wise, I'm not a big FIFA fan. But I do like playing the American football game Madden quite a lot. So yeah, I'd say they're my games, to be honest. Oh, and you can't forget cheeky Mario Kart. Everyone loves Mario Kart.
Well, I mean, and that's really interesting because, Mario Kart is so much loved, like a lot of multiplayer games. And ultimately as well, there's a whole social element to playing computer games, isn't it? Like John mentioned previously there, the fact that all of a sudden you're getting consoles with more than one controller, 2, 3, 4 of your friends can play. And that whole period, I think, of being able to get your friends around or going around a friend's house and playing whatever the games might be, like Mario Kart. I mean, I know GoldenEye was mentioned previously as well, which is potentially the best multiplayer game of all time. So this is GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. And an absolute classic. But then you can throw into the mix, again, classics that are still being made today, still being remastered, like Street Fighter,
Yep.
Mortal Kombat. You know,
Yep.
these games which there's still a market for them, and there probably always will be because they're nostalgic, but at the same time they improve just as the consoles improve. So, you know, it's an exciting time to be involved in computer gaming because not only have you got the social side face to face, but as we'll come on to in a bit later, you can then play online with your friends, and it's the whole social element to it as well. So
also what you've got as well is when those games you've just mentioned like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat came out, the kids who were kids then are now full-grown adults who are now buying it. So like,
not only that, but they're
not
making
beg
it.
mum and dad anymore. They ain't got to beg mum and dad no more for that money to go and buy the game. All right, they'll just go and buy it.
As I say, these are the people who are making them now as well. That's another thing to remember, that and I think that's something that's come full circle in gaming, is that people of our age are now big influencers and designers in terms of games, and that's why you're seeing your Street Fighters, your Mortal Kombats, and you're seeing that cycle of repetition of old games being given new life on new consoles, and so we're now at the age where I'm not saying that us three on this sat here doing this podcast having any influence on the gaming world, but what I mean is that it's people who like us who grew up playing those games are the people who are now designing and really innovating in gaming.
I saw a clip the other day of like the most recent Mortal Kombat, and it's just come so. I mean, it's incredibly violent. So probably little kids that were the age we were then probably shouldn't be playing that now. But I think I saw a clip of RoboCop fighting Terminator. Like they've literally made this. They've made this like this super fight, this fight of the giants, if you like to call it, like a grudge match that everyone would want to see. So now you can be RoboCop versus Terminator. So it's like the possibilities are endless, So we're talking about all the great stuff that happens in gaming, but we all know for every good game, there's at least 10, 15, 20 doozies, all right? There's one I want to mention particular, and I don't know if anyone ever played it. I think it was called No Man's Sky. Have you ever heard of it, John?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's we've spoken about like open world games.
Yeah, this
was like an open universe game.
Solar system. It was crazy.
I never played it, but I'm sure you probably had just as shit an experience as everyone else did on that game.
I saw it advertised and I thought to myself, oh, this sounds great. You get to go on a spaceship, you get to travel to unknown worlds and discover new like alien life and build colonies and stuff. And I played it and it was just so goddamn boring. I think I only had it for like an hour. I took it back to the shop. Like literally, I took it back to the shop and the guy was like, I'm not surprised you're returning this. Like I just told him that someone already bought me one. He was like, no. I
think not since the ET game.
Never played
the
that.
ET game, the one that got buried in the desert. That old rumor. I don't think a game has been trashed so hard for such massive hype around it. I remember seeing video after video, adverts. This is going to revolutionize the way that we play games and so on and so forth. But thankfully, I never spent any money on it. Mainly because I watched a lot of reviews on it, and exactly like you said, Jake, it's boring, repetitive, and I think for supposedly like an open galaxy game, I think they only had about 40 different presets for it, so you could encounter the same planet with virtually the same like life signs, life forms on it, should I say? Yeah. Within half an hour of playing the game, you're like, what's the point of that?
It was ridiculous. Well, that's I'd say that's probably the worst game I've ever come across. What about you guys, John?
You know what? This is going to sound like heresy as someone who loved Skyrim, right? Elder Scrolls Online.
Never played it.
Elder Scrolls Online, right? Okay. Bethesda, the makers of Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls series, as it were, because Skyrim, I think, is technically part 5 of the Elder Scrolls series. There have been a few games of it, right? But this was Elder Scrolls Online. And I got so hyped for it. I was like, okay, this is great. I've played Skyrim. I love it. As I said before, I spent God knows how much time playing that game. I bought it. I installed it. I had to wait an hour for it to download the additional DLC to make it work. Got online, and it was shocking. right?
Wow.
You get online and you see people's characters flying through the sky.
Was that glitches? Were they glitches
No,
or
yeah,
what?
yeah,
Oh
huge
wow.
glitches, huge
Wow.
glitches. There were problems with the interactions on the game. It didn't look like they'd made much effort to update the graphics from Skyrim, even after they'd done the remastered edition of Skyrim. The gameplay was shocking. Trying to interact with people online was terrible.
Right.
And it sounds like they hadn't learnt from this debacle when they released Fallout 76, which is another game that Bethesda had done, where they basically just done exactly the same thing,
Right.
with the Fallout series, which again I think is a great series of games. But they did the same thing with Fallout 76, which is just how can we spin out a game as quickly as possible with the minimum effort and make as much money as we can. And that's exactly what happened with Elder Scrolls Online, and I was furious. I'm not gonna lie. I
Sounds it.
I was so disappointed, especially the amount of money. I never returned it. I kept it as a warning. Like about getting your expectations up too high about a game. And I think I get really hyped for a game. I could just look over and look at the case of the game and just go, remember, John. Elder Scrolls Online happened. Remember that.
Oh dear. Well, what about you, Joe? You must have come across a bad game or two.
I have. And it's interesting because the way you guys describe those two games in particular, it sounds very much like the power of marketing has taken place in those instances where things are really built up and the games really come up short. And in fact, probably by the sounds of it, the makers have probably tried to do a bit too much and haven't been able to live up to maybe how they pitched the game to be. The game that I'm most disappointed in is a game I got probably at the age of about 10 years old on the Super Nintendo, and it's a game called Rise of the Robots. Okay, now as a big fan, okay, of films like Terminator, RoboCop, like you mentioned previously, at that young age, I was really excited about a game that involved robots and robots fighting, no less. So this is like a you select your character, a bit like your classic Street Fighter, and you're fighting against other people. This game was the most terrible game I've ever played. They didn't even try to make it expansive. Okay, literally all you could do was punch and kick. Okay,
So
you had
it's just like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, but game version.
Yeah, just basically two robots facing each other, punching and kicking each other. There was no special moves, no special Hadouken or anything, to get going. No, nothing. Literally, you punch and kick, and you basically get past the first two robots, and then it becomes just impossible. Like you just get whooped every single time by this giant hench robot with long arms, and you can't get anywhere near it. So that was such a disappointment, especially because I paid full price. Now, I don't like paying full price for video games, okay? But this was around about birthday time. I had my birthday money, £40 for this game. And a bit like you, John, I still have it, still sits in the box as a reminder that A, okay, never believe the hype from the media, and B, never pay full price for a game. That's now a mantra I live by. Okay, I would always like to get the best deal, a special offer, second hand, whatever it might be, because I don't want to get burned, basically. So that was one experience for me, which lives really long and really hard in the memory.
By the sounds of the way we've all described it, we've been extremely scarred by these bad purchases we've made and bad experiences we've had. But we need to remember that with gaming, sometimes it is like that, No matter how much marketing you put behind something, all right, you just don't know. It will always just end up just being trash. If it's trash, it's trash. There's nothing you can do. Even downloadable content, none of that can help, all right? It'll just always be trash. Speaking of downloadable content, DLC, downloadable content, in-app purchases, whatever you want to call it, John, there's always been the running joke with us, isn't there, where we always say you love a bit of downloadable content. You love making the purchases. Out of all the purchases you've made, where can you say to yourself, oh dear, I think I spent a bit much on that? There's got to be somewhere where you thought to yourself, you know what? I don't think I should have bought that. That was way too much.
I am a sucker for DLC. I am a real sucker for it. And I think the reason for it is that if you're properly invested in a game and you really enjoy it, and someone says, here's some more of it, give us some money, I'll do that.
I'm not going to lie. I've done it myself. I'm not. The Jurassic Park game, the Evolution one, where you build the Jurassic Park theme parks, whatever. Yeah,
Okay.
I love it, and I've bought probably all the DLC off of it. It's probably been a total around 50, 60 pound in total. All right, I'm not ashamed of that.
No, neither am I. I mean,
I would buy it all over again.
this is the thing, right? And it's interesting because DLC is almost a spin-off now. Main game companies have brought in the idea of DLC, and it's actually become from what they call like freemium games or free to play. So there's companies out there, and I've got a few games on my laptop that I've downloaded that didn't cost me a penny to play. As in, I downloaded them, things like World of Warships, War Thunder, stuff like that. Even you could say Call of Duty Warzone in that category. It's a free to play game. It doesn't cost you anything to get your hands on the game and start playing. But then they start enticing you with stuff like, oh, do you want to spend £2.30 and get this, and it gives you an extra skin, or do you want to buy an extra ship, a premium ship on World of Warships? It'll only cost you $5.99. Yeah, I'll drop $5.99 if I want to get myself a USS Arizona. Yeah, why not? I'll spend it. But that's, I can kind of forgive companies that give you the game for free and then say, here's some optional stuff for you to buy if you want. Yeah. Okay, that's totally forgivable because I haven't paid anything to get my hands on the game in the first place. Right. So anything I then choose to give goes to the creators anyway, and hopefully they'll use it to make more content and so on and so forth. What I can't, the DLCs I can't forgive are things like the recent debacle over the Battlefront 2 game, the Star Wars Battlefront 2 game that EA released, where they were basically making people buy loot boxes in the hope of getting a better character.
Oh, was that the one on the PS4?
Yeah.
That whole series of Battlefront games were crap. I hated them. I did not enjoy them.
I was not a fan. I quite like the first one just for the novelty of it. Yeah. Like, oh, okay, some multiplayer Star Wars, wicked. But the point being that it kind of put a real dark side on that whole DLC thing.
No pun intended.
Yeah, but the idea was that it became what they known as pay to win. So the idea being that you would, I can't forgive a company that charges you 40, 50, 60 pounds these days for a game up front and then expects you to pay even more money to then unlock content within the game. I think that's wrong. Yeah, it is, and that's where I draw the line with DLC. I can't be abiding that. Again, if it's a free to play game, happy days. I don't mind dropping 5, 6, 7 quid every now and then on it just to get myself a little skin on a character or to get a little premium ship, which is no better or worse than the ships in the game theoretically. Yeah. But it's just something a bit different from what everyone else is using. So I'm a bit of a sucker for it.
It's funny the way you talk about pay to win there. Like they're trying to sucker us in, these computer game manufacturers. And it makes me think that actually they've probably been doing that to us for many years. Now, I'm thinking back to being in arcade, right? But you're in an arcade, you're playing something like, I don't know, Time Crisis or Jurassic Park or virtual soccer. And basically, the only way you're going to get past the stage is after you die, you put another pound in to continue because you got like 100 zombies running at you or something crazy like that. And it's impossible. There's no way you can kill them all on your own. So basically, you're going to die. You're going to have to put another pound in. Otherwise, you're going to have to walk away. So in a strange kind of way, I feel like they've been sucking it to us for years now. They're smart.
No. I agree with that to an extent.
You're right.
I think it's a bit more blatant though if you paid 50, 60 quid for a game and then they expect you to pay more.
It's a piss take.
Yeah,
it's a real piss take.
But no, you're absolutely right, Joe. God knows how much money's been spent in arcades over the years. I think to myself, I completed that Jurassic Park game.
Really?
And I dread to think how much money I put in when I completed it. It must have been about 20 quid. Just to say that I completed the Jurassic Park game in the arcade.
So moving away from, let's say, DLC, but still staying on video game purchases, what would you say your biggest purchases within the video game realm? That could be anything, a console, accessories, software, whatever, hardware, whatever. What would you think to yourself, I really dropped a lot of money on that?
I think at the time when I bought it and the age I was, it was a substantial amount of money, and that was my PSP.
I had one of them. Waste of money. I
bought a PSP. I thought, wow, this is amazing. I can play PlayStation on the move. It's like a Game Boy. I was still quite young. I must have been about early 20s, very early 20s when the PSP was released, I think. And I remember spending a lot of money on it. It was expensive when it came out, and I remember I don't think you got a huge amount with it, if I remember rightly.
No,
don't get me wrong, you got everything you needed to play it.
Yeah. Oh no, you didn't get. There was something you needed? Was it a memory card or something they didn't give you with it, or something like that?
So. I think you had to expand the memory with the memory card.
I even bought the PSP Vita, which you'd think after being stung by the PSP I'd let it go, but no, I'll let them do me again with the PSP.
See, I'm very different to you guys. I absolutely loved my PSP. Now, for me, one thing I loved was the UMD movies, right? So not only could you play the games, but you could watch movies on it. And for me, that was probably, thinking about it, the first time I had a handheld console where I could buy a movie and put it in the console and watch it. And that for me was impressive. Now, different to maybe playing a DVD on a PS2, to be able to take it around handheld with you, to not necessarily have to have it saved on your phone, which would rinse your phone battery or whatever. I found that quite innovative actually at the time. I still got mine, still got my UMDs. I think they range from The Exorcist to The Goonies, like somehow managed to get a real range of movies, because basically the movies were hard to come by. So I think I bought most of the movies on my UMD for my PSP at like airports, in the Dixons or whatever were there. They just always randomly have PSP games and movies there. So for me, I found that quite cool. I had a really good experience with my PSP. I've still got it, still use it. So yeah, I'm going to disagree with you guys on that one.
The UMD was basically the computer game equivalent of the mini disc. It was around for a little bit. Yeah. Everyone loved it, and then
it went away.
It went away. Like we don't know what happened. Like it just went. Can you still get UMDs? I'm sure you can
streaming services, wasn't it? Streaming services, downloadable content, memory expansion, processing power. Just makes it all irrelevant.
Yeah, I am sure somewhere in the deepest, darkest corner of the internet, you can still probably buy UMDs from somewhere. There's someone probably still selling.
More than likely.
Someone obviously cashed in on it when they thought, this is gonna get big, and then it didn't. So I think you can still probably buy them. But the PSP, I did enjoy it to start with, and then I think it just got to the point where I don't know. I think I just maybe I got bored of it. I'm not sure, but as I say, the PSP Vita, I got that, and I used that even less than I used the PSP. It was just for me that's probably my worst purchase.
If you're looking at it as return on investment, right? Well, let's face it, these things aren't really investments. They're just investment in your enjoyment, but it didn't pay off. I don't even know what I did with it. I don't even know what I did with it.
I want to say I traded it because it makes me feel better about spending all that money than possibly getting some money back, but I can't confirm nor deny either situations.
I suppose there's definitely in a lot of those handheld consoles as well is now the advancements of, as I was saying before, tablets, mobile phones. Definitely. So nowadays, you can get high quality games and gaming applications on your mobile phone where you don't necessarily have to take out your handheld console anymore to enjoy it. Battery lives are certainly a lot better than they are. And if you haven't got one of them, you can always use a battery pack to improve your battery on your phone. So, that's really, for me, taken over. And I did wonder, John, as well, are there any particular mobile games, mobile applications that you really like, that you think have been good, you've enjoyed playing, and anything you'd recommend to our listeners?
When you take a franchise as awesome and as influential on my formative years as Pokemon and turn that into a mobile game in the form of Pokemon Go, I think everyone went nuts for that game. And I think it's had a bit of a renaissance recently with some of the stuff they've done during the lockdown, where you can do stuff remotely. They've been very clever with that, and I still play it every now and then. I kind of go through phases with it where I'll play it intensely for about 2 weeks and then just go, screw it, I'm done, and leave it for a bit. But that for me is one of the most clever, in the sense that you've reached out to an entire generation of people who loved Pokemon, and even those who don't necessarily love Pokemon have downloaded and played the game because a lot of people were doing it. It's funny because I find that with mobile and tablet gaming, you're really limited by things like you said, Joe, battery life and screen size and things like that. But there are some really good advancements now. And, you know, I remember when some of the first mobile, you know, remember Snake on your Nokia.
Yeah.
How addictive was that
Snake.
game, you know?
Yeah.
But it was just such a simple game. You're literally moving a line across a black and green screen trying to get dots. But it was such a huge thing on a mobile phone. I remember so many people when I was young, you know, like when we were younger, wanted that Nokia because it had Snake on it.
See, that's the funny thing, right? The way you described buying your Xbox before for maybe playing a game like Halo, right? So the same thing was happening 20 years ago with Nokias. Okay, kids wanted the Nokia just to have Snake, you know, and if you were fortunate enough to have a Nokia. Now, I was unlucky, okay, different story for a different time. But my first phone was not a Nokia. My first phone was an Ericsson or something else like that. So, John, you'll probably remember fondly those journeys to school on the school bus. I'd beg you to let me use your phone to play Snake and try and beat your top score, which I don't think I could ever do. But I do appreciate you let me take part in that gaming on your mobile device. I mean, even back then, it's much appreciated.
Listen, just to see the light of joy in your face when I handed you that Nokia and you were like, yeah, Snake time. And you wouldn't talk to me for the entire coach journey. Just be sitting there playing Snake.
I was just using you for your Snake, John. That's all.
Pretty much, yeah. Stop using me. Dirty bastard. But yeah, when I think about mobile game, you know, that's a classic that springs to mind. But, you know, I'm a big fan of the Total War series of games. Rome, Medieval, Total Shogun, you know, the strategy games, and the fact that they managed to release this is where we are with kind of tablet technology now. The fact that you can play Rome Total War on your iPad, and it's really quite, you know, smooth and slick is great. I like doing that. The fact that you can play your big strategy games on iPad now, classic games that were normally limited to a computer, can be downloaded and played on an iPad. I would recommend if anyone likes big strategy games like that, a bit of history. I know Joe maybe has grown his knowledge of Roman history a little bit by playing a bit of Rome Total War in the past.
Absolutely, everything I know about ancient Rome is learned from computer games like Rome Total War, so I can definitely attest to that.
I'm a big fan of the Warhammer franchise, as you guys know, but for people who don't necessarily know, they've made some real strides in getting the brand out there using online games. So there's a game at the moment that I'm absolutely addicted to called Warhammer Chaos and Conquest, where you're a general and you have to grow your army, and then you can do PvP against other players online, or you can play against, you know, they put artificial intelligence sort of foes out there, bots for you to beat, and so on and so forth. But it's weird though, because mobile phone games, I find that even people who have no interest in gaming, like the three of us do, people like my mum, for example, she will sit there and play games on her iPad and on her phone because it's there in front of her. She can find something that she likes, and it's not an effort. It's her own little escapism. So things like, you know, Candy Crush and games like that. Even like Angry Birds and stuff, you know, it's a bit of escapism for people who don't normally do gaming like traditional like we do. So that's what I found fascinating with mobile game apps, is that it has brought that world of gaming to a whole group of people who have never touched gaming before.
Yeah. So moving away from the whole sort of mobile phone sort of gaming and back to consoles, you're part of a group of guys who stream Call of Duty.
Yeah, at the moment it's quite Call of Duty heavy. We have played a couple of other games on there, but it's the funny thing with streaming is you got to give the people what they want, and what the people want is to watch people play Call of Duty Warzone or Call of Duty Modern Warfare Online.
And what is your what are you guys called?
There's a couple of channels that I play on. One is JME JNS Gaming. So that's JMEJNS Gaming, which is with my colleague and friend Jamie Jones, and his brother Danny, who you can be found on Mighty Ginger Gaming, playing up to his ginger roots, literally. I play on both of their channels, and sometimes the channels come together and we all three of us play together as well.
Cool. And so what was it that started this whole sort of getting together, like I'll call you guys a streaming crew? What started the streaming crew?
Well, I'd only joined the company that I worked for relatively late last year, and I got to know Jamie, who's my colleague, does the same job as me, but in a different part of the country. And, you know, as you do, you get talking to your colleagues and you find out a bit more about what they're interested in, what you might have some shared interests in. And he was saying, oh, you know, I love playing the new Call of Duty. Something, to be honest, that I hadn't even looked at, because the last few Call of Duty games, the latest Black Ops game that came out a few years ago, and some of the old Call of Duty, I say they are old Call of Duty games, but they were set in the future and they were just haggard. They were just weird. I did not like them. So I'd kind of left the Call of Duty franchise alone. But he was the one who convinced me to get my Xbox back out, whack it on the telly, and play Call of Duty.
Was that with the release of the Warzone coming out then? Was that at that time when the Warzone's been released?
Yeah, it was. It was Warzone that grabbed me back into it, because he said to me, John, it's free. You can download it. It's free. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. It's not cost you anything. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'd watched a few guys playing things like PUBG, Fortnite, that sort of thing. And I wasn't too sure that I would be into the whole, you know, like battle royale game. But I played it. I downloaded it. It took ages to download. That is one big ass game to download. But I was so happy that I did, because it was like, this is the best of Call of Duty. I remember. This is the Call of Duty I remember. So Jamie was the one who put the idea in my head, and he said, you know what, I've been thinking about doing some streaming for a little while, and his reasoning was, I'm gonna play the game regardless.
Yeah.
Why not throw it up there on the internet and see who enjoys me playing? Who wants to watch me playing this game? A lot of people do it. All we got to do is go on Facebook and scroll through, and you'll see people. They put people playing Call of Duty for you to watch live and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Jamie said to me, "Oh, download it, play it, see if you like it, and then, you know, even if you're not any good, get on the stream, because it'd be great to have someone else to interact with." I think that was the problem that. Unless you can constantly look at a screen and look at comments and play, it's quite hard to be seen as interactive or doing things and talking. You know what I mean? But having a second person there, makes it a lot easier to bounce off one another. Get angry and swear at each other when things go wrong, and, you know, some really funny moments that you can see because you've got another person's perspective of it, and so on and so forth. Like that's what I think why he kind of got me into it, from the point of view of, I'm not expecting you to do anything other than play the game, have a headset, and talk to me and chat and stuff like that. Okay, and that's how it started.
I'm guessing this started around the whole start of lockdown, right?
It was just before.
Okay,
it was just before, because we would both kind of finish work at the same time.
Right.
We'd both take about 2-3 hours to have dinner, have a break, chill out, and then 8 o'clock would roll around and it's Call of Duty time.
Okay, so going forward, once we can start living normal again, or as normal as we can live, are you guys going to carry on with the streaming?
Yeah. The beauty of it is that the streaming times that we've chosen should not be affected at all by whether we're in lockdown or not.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
So, John, you know, I'm really intrigued, because I've had the opportunity to watch your colleagues playing online. I've watched the stream, and I mean, I'm going to say it right now, you guys are awesome. I mean, you kick ass on that game, and Call of Duty has become a phenomenon just recently, of course, really because of the lockdown, and it's a chance for people to socialize, like you've said, catch up while playing a game, doing something you enjoy. But you guys are really good. Now, equally, there's plenty of us out there, me included, who are not so good. And I mean, gone are the days really now where you would go and buy CVG, it's a computer video game magazine, and get tips and tricks and understand how you can improve on a computer game. So I'm keen to understand, you know, for those people like me out there, you know, how would you recommend people like me can go out and improve their video game playing ability?
It's like anything in life. Just practice. Okay, I mean, I've been fortunate, or unfortunate as it were, to have been furloughed from my job for the last few months. And what that's doing has allowed me to play a lot more Call of Duty than is probably healthy for a person. But it does mean that I've got a lot of practice in. And it's about repetition. I think it's about understanding where you're playing, know where you're playing. So if you're let's take Call of Duty as an example. If you've played enough Warzone games, if you've played enough Plunder games, if you play the multiplayer maps enough to know what's going on, you can kind of anticipate how other players are going to play and react. It's been really interesting because we've had a bit of an evolution in our Battle Royale games recently, where the three of us, at least me, Danny and Jamie, we'd all be running almost exactly the same weapons. But what we realised is that we weren't filling gaps that were needed. So what we've decided to do is, Jamie, for example, is very good with a sniper rifle. He's probably better with a sniper rifle than me and Danny are. So right. Jamie is now our dedicated sniper. So he runs around with his high-capacity assault rifle and a sniper rifle. I happen to love playing with LMGs, and I've got some amazing loadouts for some LMGs. That's a light machine gun. Mm-hmm. And I've become the dedicated support player. So the idea being that if the targets need to be pinned down, like, you know, that's my job. I need to pin someone down because I've got a high capacity magazine. I've got 100, 200 rounds in a box maybe, and RPGs for days. It's my job. You know, I'll kill people, but I might not necessarily kill as many people as a sniper will. But my job is to make sure that people are suppressed. And Danny's role is to rush. So that's the entire point, is find a role and get good at it. If you want to improve.
The way you're talking, like, you guys have actually sort of formed your own little band of merry men in a way.
Basically, we've looked at how an actual, like,
you made a strategy.
Platoon would work. You know, a squad would work in the military. You wouldn't have all guys all with the same weapons. You would have someone who's a dedicated sniper. You would have someone who's got that support system. You'd have a medic. You know, I found myself becoming the medic as well because Danny and Jamie get down so bloody often in our games that I'm having to run around and revive them because that's their role, is to put themselves out there. But that's how we've evolved. That's how we've improved. By realizing that there are certain niches that need filling within, and that's just in Call of Duty. You know, that's in Warzone.
And on average, how many sort of people do you reckon you're streaming to of an evening?
Some nights it can be sort of 5,000 people. Some nights it could be a couple of hundred people. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It just depends. I tell you what, it very much depends on what you're doing when they scroll down and see your video. If you're at the loading screen doing and saying nothing, keep scrolling. If you're in the middle of a game and you've got some action going on, you see the viewing figures go up.
Okay. So, is there any plans to move forward with other games, or are we just sticking to Call of Duty right now?
We've tried some other games in the past, some which were hilarious. The totally reliable delivery game was hysterical, but not a lot of people watched it. I'm playing a lot of SnowRunner at the moment as well. Both Danny and Jamie have downloaded SnowRunner. It's a very different game from Call of Duty, but it's a kind of a bit of a phenomenon. So we are planning on potentially doing some stuff with SnowRunner. And it depends on what else comes out. You know, we've got season 4 of Call of Duty due to drop at any time at this stage. We don't know when, but, you know, that will generate a lot of interest back in Call of Duty, no doubt.
Cool. I mean, you know, in the future sometime, it'd be good if we get all three of you on. When we can stop, you know, and go start actually sitting in the same room together, we could all get everyone on together. We could have a sort of more of an in-depth chat about it, you know? It'd be nice to have the other guy's point of view of what's going on as well, you know?
Oh, they'd probably love to do it. They'd love to have a chat about it, yeah.
That's cool. So, is there anything you want to plug? Any socials or anything that you want to tell us about?
Social. Well, you can follow both Jamie and Danny, and like I say, I'm on both of their channels and sometimes on both at the same time. We broadcast live on Facebook and on YouTube. Yeah. There is Instagram account for Jamie, which is again JME Gaming. If you put that into Instagram, you will find that. Yep. Again, if you look for JME JNS Gaming or Mighty Ginger Gaming on either Facebook or YouTube, you'll find them. Like, subscribe, get those notifications to see when we go live. Yeah.
Good. It's been nice having you on, John. It's talked a lot about gaming, and it's nice to, you know, all get together and have a chat about this type of thing and hear our different experiences throughout that world of gaming we've travelled through. So yeah, thanks for coming on.
No, many thanks for having me.
John, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks a lot. We'll make sure we share the links to your friends' gaming platforms on our social media, so they'll be there for people to see and to watch and to share. all I say to listeners out there is go check out John and his friends playing online via the stream. You'll be impressed. You will learn something. I know I have. And thanks for coming on, John. It's been a pleasure.
No worries, guys. Thanks for that.
Okay, no problem. Thanks a lot, John. Guys, thanks for listening today. Thanks for tuning in all the time. So it's been me, Jake. It's a goodbye from me. And Joe, is it goodbye from you as well?
It's goodbye from me.
Okay, see you later, guys.